Hello, friends, and welcome to the Friends in Fiction show Behind the Book with 4 New York Times bestselling authors and endless stories. I am Ron Block.
And I'm Meg Walker. And on behalf of the Friends in Fiction co-founders and co-hosts, Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry, we are excited to welcome you to a special episode of Friends in Fiction Behind the Book, a quicker deep dive into the life and work of one of our favorite authors.
Favorite is a good word because today we are thrilled to welcome my good friend Caroline Leavitt. Caroline is the award-winning author of 12 novels, including New York Times bestseller Pictures of You and Is This Tomorrow? She's been a book critic for People magazine, and her essays, articles, and stories have been included in New York Magazine, the Modern Love column in the New York Times, Salon, and the Daily Beast, among many, many others. The recipient of a New York Foundation for the Arts Award for Fiction, Sundance Screenwriters Lab finalist. He is also the co-founder of A Mighty Blaze. She lives in Hoboken, New Jersey, New York's unofficial 6th borough. Her husband, the writer Jeff Tamarkin, and she has an acting student.
All right. Well, the book you didn't mention in that little bio is Cruel, Beautiful World, which is one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
It has stuck with me for so long, and I've recommended it to so many people.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Anyway, Caroline's latest novel, Days of Wonder, has just been published, with our good friend Adriana Trigiani saying, "There's good reason Caroline Leavitt is considered our great American storyteller." Days of Wonder, her incandescent novel of young love and regret, will not leave you when you reach the end. This is just one of many, many glowing accolades. Congratulations, Caroline, on such incredible raves. Including a full page of love in the LA Times.
I know. Right? That just happened yesterday. I'm completely shocked. I keep memorizing it.
I read it. You said it, and I read it a couple of times, and I'm like, man, they love this book. I'm like, good, because I do too.
That is awesome.
Okay, let's dive into it a little bit. Let's have the elevator pitch. What's the new book, Days of Wonder, about? And also, in true Friends in Fiction fashion, we want to know what it's really about.
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. Okay, the elevator pitch is that Days of Wonder is about the afterlives of two 15-year-old kids who may or may not have committed a crime, an attempted murder. One of them, the boy who's wealthy, gets free, but the girl, who's the daughter of a single mom with kind of a hardscrabble past, is sentenced to prison for 25 years. Boy vanishes. The girl, Ella, gets out after 6 years, and she's desperate to find her lost love, to find the child she had when she was in prison, who would be 6, and to find out what really happened that night. What the book really is about is longing. It's about mothers and daughters and innocence and guilt and first love and love of self. And it's really about the longing we have to belong, to feel like we're a part of the community.
I love that.
Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the origin story, another of our favorite topics here on Friends in Fiction. So can you tell us a little bit about the origin of this book, and that when you had the little spark and thought, like, yes, this is my next book idea for sure?
Yeah, this just goes to show you ideas come from everywhere. I was sitting with a friend of mine she was an older woman, and a friend of hers and of mine had told us we really like each other. So we met, and we did. I just loved her. Fabulous woman, successful, wonderful, kind. And after I had known her about 2 years, she said, "Caroline, I have to tell you something." And I thought, oh, what? I hope she's okay. And she said, when I was 15, I committed a murder. And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, I did it." She admitted to it. She said, "I did it. I was 15. I was crazy. I was a car without brakes. I served time. I served 5 years, and I determined I was going to remake my life and be a better person." And she did. And when she was early released, she changed her name, moved, took on a new identity, became this wonderful, wonderful person. And I swore I would never reveal her name, so I won't. So I can't tell you any details about her. But, she was fine until she was 40, when somebody found out and they outed her. She lost
Oh
friends,
my
she
God.
lost jobs. She was just panic stricken because she kept saying, when do I get to be forgiven? When do I get to be forgiven? And she had to do the whole reinvention thing over and over. So I was really interested in that, that feeling of when do we get to be forgiven? How do we reinvent ourselves? But I knew I had to change the story. So I took her story and I made sure the only thing that was her story that was in here was the reinvention. I made it a Romeo and Juliet story, excuse me, of two young kids in New York City from different classes. Instead of a murder, I made it an attempted murder. But basically it was sort of the same, trajectory. How do we be forgiven? And what if people never forgive us? How do you live in the world? And the more I started researching, the more I realized that America likes to think that there are second acts and that we forgive people, but a lot of times we don't. A lot of times we don't. There's,
True.
if you look at, I wrote this piece for the Daily Beast about Leslie Van Houten, the last of the Manson girls. Terrible crime, horrible, disgusting crime. She knows it. She knew it was a horrible, disgusting crime when she was 17. She served time for it. She's now like, I forget how old she is now, like 78 or something. But while in prison, she remade herself. She counseled other women. She got degrees. She's older now. She's no threat whatsoever to society, but her parole kept being denied, 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 denied. Even the families of the people she did her crime against have said she served her time, let her out, and they finally let her out. And when I wrote that piece, people were mad. I mean, they sent me emails saying, how can you forgive? And I said, well, it would be one thing if it was Charles Manson who said if he ever got out, he would go out and do the same thing.
Right,
But
right.
this is another person who would not, who deeply regrets what she did and has tried to remake her life. And I was just really interested in that.
I love that. I love it. It's amazing that the true piece of it just floored me when I read that.
Me too.
Yeah, I bet. I
I
bet. It's not
bet, I
something you're
bet.
expecting your friend to tell you.
Yeah.
Like,
So
what?
did you start out like intending to explore themes? There's so much about belonging and community in this novel too. Um,
I did. I mean, I did. And then the novel kept morphing as I was writing it. I mean, I kept trying to figure out the biggest thing was with Ella, the girl who may or may not have committed the crime, her mom. And I was trying to think of like, well, I wanted to do that theme of community. And I sort of remembered my mom, who grew up in an Orthodox Jewish family, one of 8 kids with all kinds of restrictions. And she adored the community. My mother never stopped talking about it. But when she was 18, her father, who she just adored, and he was a rabbi, died very suddenly of a heart attack. And my mother just stopped believing in God. She left the community. But all her life, she used to tell myself and my sister how wonderful that community was, how she yearned for it and she wanted to go back to it. And she never even tried. She felt she never could. So that sort of struck a chord in me because I always felt like an outsider myself. So I thought, well, I want to investigate a community that's even more restrictive. And because I live in the New York City area, that means the Hasidic community in Williamsburg. But none of the people in Williamsburg, though they were infallibly, absolutely polite to me, they wouldn't really talk to me. So I put out the call for women who had grown up in those communities and had either left on their own volition or they were booted out. And I found these 2 incredible women, just amazing. One of them is Beatrice Weber. She had something like 13 kids. She was booted out of her community, lost custody, but she never gave up. And in fact, last year, she sued New York City to give better secular education for kids who were in yeshivas, like her son, which are Jewish schools, and she won. And she won. And she's this amazing activist. And the other
I love
person is
that.
Leah Lax, who also is really interesting. She's an author. She has a new book coming out. Oh God, I forgot the title. Anyway, she's an amazing, amazing author. What's amazing about her is she joined a Hasidic community by volition when she was a teenager because she had inklings that she was gay and she didn't know what to do about it. So she joined this community, had a million kids, was married to a guy. And as she got older, she realized this is not who I am. I have to leave. And it cost her to be who she was. It cost her because she left and she also lost custody of her kids. But I asked both women, you know, they're telling me all these stories and what they lost. And I said, well, what do you miss anything? And they both said the same thing. We miss the community. You know, we miss the community. If you were in a community like that, if you wanted to get married and you had no money, whole community would come together and give you the most beautiful wedding. If you had a child who was sick and you needed daycare, no problem. The community would help you. It was sort of, there was something comforting as well as restricting about
Right.
having a specific set of rules that you could follow. So I used my mom's stories, a lot of my mom's stories, mostly the yearning, I melded it to the stories of Beatrice Weber and Leah Lax. And both those women read all my pages and gave me great, I got so many things wrong and they helped me. And they vetted all the pages and it was wonderful. And, you know, now they're both my friends, which is wonderful too, because they're amazing.
With
Love
endless,
that.
endless, interesting conversations
Yeah.
that I bet you had. Crazy. Okay, so you dug in a little bit on the characters in the background, but one of the things that's at the center of the story is the, as you coined it, the Romeo and Juliet story, Ella and Jude. Where did their story blossom from? Ella is just like a character we've never ever met on the page.
Well,
Where did
thank
she come
you.
from?
Well, she came from me. I mean, when I was 17, you know, I went to a very working class high school and I was like the only Jewish family there. And all the girls in my high school were blonde and they either had straight hair or they had big teased hair, which was the style back then. And I was bullied a whole lot, like really bullied.
Oh,
I mean, people would threaten to beat me up. And when I was 17, there was this bad boy in the high school, like really sexy, really this and that. And he asked me out. And of course, because this was the first boy who had ever paid attention to me, I fell wildly, passionately, madly, crazily in love. And of course, my parents said, we don't want you seeing that boy. He has a bad reputation. If you see him, we're going to call the police and say he's selling drugs and we're going to like ground you and blah, blah, blah. So it was very Romeo and Juliet. I mean, I snuck around to see him. During the summer, I told my parents I was going to all the overnights at day camp, but I was sneaking away to see this boy. And
You
we were, you know,
sneak.
I know, I was like, I was terrible. And then, you know, it was very short. It was only like 4 months, but you know, when you're a teenager, that's forever.
oh, it's a
When he
lifetime. Yeah.
when he broke up with me, I had a bona fide nervous breakdown. I couldn't
Oh.
eat, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything but cry. And I begged my parents to take me to a therapist, and they said, "Oh my God, no daughter of ours is going to a therapist." And I was actually rescued by this girl who came out of nowhere, who knew my boyfriend and knew me, and she knew that I was suffering. And she said, "Come on, I'm going to take care of you." And she took me to her house every single day and made sure I was okay. And eventually I was okay. And actually the funniest thing is that I'm still friends with that boy. I mean, it's like a million years later and he's
That's
a
so funny.
musician now. And we still like we talk and this and that. And you know, he knows my story. And I actually asked him a few years ago when I was writing this book, did you love me? I mean, did you
Oh,
like, I just really, I said, it's okay if you didn't. I just really want to know because I was just torn inside out. And he was very honest. And he said, you know, well, I always had a funny feeling when I was with you. And I always felt like you were like no one I had ever met before. So I don't know. And I said, okay, that's an honest answer. That's fine. But, you know, it was such a dramatic thing. And I wouldn't have changed anything of it for the world because it was an experience. You know, it was amazing. And so that's where Ella came from. Her love was my love when I was 17.
Oh, what a great
I
story.
know.
it was a great story.
It
It's
is.
it's kind of a good segue into exploring more of the characters in the book because I think I read somewhere that some of the other characters were just like an unloading for you. You kind of some of the people in your own life, you've kind of not got back at them, but you kind of like based these characters on some of the issues you had with them. And that makes this almost, and I'm asking 5 questions at once, but it feels like it's your most personal story. I want
It
to
is.
kind of talk about.
It was deeply story. So much of Helen in the book, who's Ella's Hasidic mother, was my mom. I even gave her the same name as my mom, Helen. And I gave, I put, my father was a total brute, but I gave a really nice guy character his name because I sort of wanted to redeem him.
Oh,
And, there was a lot about, my life in there, that feeling of wanting, just that feeling of yearning. You want to belong, and you have to realize that you have to make your own community, and then people will come to you. And if they don't, then that's fine. You just move on without them. They don't need to be in your community. And I did. I wrote a lot about the stuff that really bothered me. I mean, I worry all the time that I'm going to be arrested, although I've never been. But I wrote about that. And, you know,
oh.
Such vivid characters. I knew they
thank
had to
you.
come from amazing brain of yours.
Oh.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about the setting.
Okay.
As you mentioned before, class plays a big role in the novel. Jude is well off and connected, and Ella is not. And the
Not.
justice system treats them as you might expect. So did you know you wanted to write about these disparities going in? And can you talk
I
a little bit
did.
about your research in bringing the settings to such realistic focus?
Well, I lived a lot of it. I mean, when I moved to Manhattan, Manhattan was very different. It was, when did I move? It was like 1990. You could still afford apartments. I was able to get my own apartment, but you could see things were starting to change. And in Manhattan, there were such wealthy people. And it didn't hit home until I started, dating. And my first boyfriend was a Wall Street guy. And he used to tell me all the time, well, I want to be a writer too, but I have to have enough money in the bank. And I said, well, how much money do you need? And he said, well, I have 5 million now, but I would say like another 3 million. And I said, what? Are you kidding me?
That's a heck of a
And he
nest
said,
egg.
no. And my next boyfriend actually was very, very wealthy. And he said, oh, well, we'll live together. My father will get us an apartment. I thought, okay, fine. My apartment was at the time was like 6 by 6 with a slanted floor, rats,
Oh.
mice, screaming neighbors. The apartment his father got us was a pre-war, which means it's beautifully detailed, 6-room, 3-bedroom, overlooking Central Park with a doorman.
It's like a fairy
And
tale.
it was a fairy tale. And I just looked at it saying, what are you doing? Like, I can't believe I get to live here. And the weirdest thing was he kept thinking the apartments weren't good enough. So his parents would like move us to better and better apartments with better and
Wow.
better views. And when we broke up, I of course lost that apartment, and I had to move back to my old apartment, which was this crummy little place in this my apartment was actually right next to the welfare hotel. And I remember thinking, like, on the one hand, I felt at home. I felt like, okay, this is a world I can navigate. No one expects too much of me. And on the other hand, I thought, wow, that was really amazing to live like that. But there was a cost to it because his parents were always after me about I didn't dress right. And they would buy me these expensive clothes. One day his parents showed up with an expensive set of golf clubs because they thought I should learn to golf. It was like,
I can't imagine that.
I can't, no. And they always wanted to go on like family vacations. They were going to hire a yacht and go to the Bahamas. And it was just weird to me. And if you've ever been to the Upper East Side, it's sort of like the way I described it. It looks bleached. I mean, you've never seen anything so clean. And even the dogs have fancy outfits. And people throw around money, and also they don't always treat people who are less than them very well. I mean, I had one friend who lived, well, she wasn't really a friend, she was an acquaintance. She lived in the Ritz Hotel, which is really, she lived there. And I went to visit her once, and I was astonished because where she lived in the hotel was magnificent. It was like 4 rooms. But on the other hand, she had food ground into the carpet and on the bedspread. And I thought, what about the cleaning ladies? And she said, oh, that's what they do. That's their job. And
Ooh.
I would never do that. I'm the kind of person who, if I'm in a hotel, I clean for the cleaning ladies. Before I leave, I've been known to wash the floor myself, just to make sure, because I know they work so hard. So I was just really interested in, like, looking at class. And also I knew that, that if you have the right lawyer, you can get off. And I spoke a lot to, there's this guy in New York his name is Peter Barta, and he's a defense attorney. And he was so, so great because he told me the truth. A lot of lawyers I tried to interview would say, like, no, lawyers are this and that. And Peter would say, well, they're very tricky in the way they ask a question, how they can get a confession. And if you don't know certain things, like a young girl, you're supposed to have an adult with you. You're supposed to be read your Miranda rights in a certain way so that you know what to do. And he told me all the ways that they would screw it up to get a confession. That really wasn't a confession. So I spoke to, he like unlocked everything for me. And he did it in a really funny way too. I mean, he told me like which movies to watch, which movies wouldn't happen. And he made me very aware. So if I ever get arrested, I know exactly what to do. And the first thing I'm going to do is call him. Never speak to, just take my advice. Never speak to the cops without a lawyer. Just no matter what they say, never do it.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. We talked about setting, we've talked about character, but we want to talk a little bit about your process. Anybody who follows you on social media has got a really good sense of what you go through. But what's the brand? What's the Caroline Leavitt way to bring a story to life and to publication? Are you a gardener or an architect?
I'm an architect. I mean, I used to be a gardener, and I would end up with 800-page novels, and I wouldn't know what to do with them. And my agent would roll her eyes. And then I had a student at UCLA tell me, I just took this great structure course from John Truby, who's a structure guru.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like a tape? And I said, no, of course I don't want a tape. She said, I'm sending it to you anyway. And I said, okay, to be polite. And I started to listen to it, and it was like my world cracked open, because he talked about story in a way I never considered, which was like, everybody has a skeleton. We all have a skeleton. We all have ribs and clavicles and everything else. And what makes us different is, how much flesh we have, the color of the flesh, our hair, or our personality, our clothes. It's like that with a story. And he also talks about, I call it I sort of finessed it, and I now call it the Rolling Stones method of story, which is you can't always get what you want. But if you try, which is really struggle, you can get what you need. And your wants and needs are very different. So now I take 6 months to, like, before I even start to write, to just map out the characters. What is it they want? What's haunting them, which should be haunting me? What's their misconception about what they want, so they can't really get it? Because, like, for example, if you think, oh, if I'm only rich, I'm going to be happy, you're in for a surprise, because you may get rich and you're still going to be miserable, because that's a misconception. Then I go into things like, well, what choices have the characters made, and how have they screwed things up even more? And how do you get to the point where you think everything's ruined, this is rock bottom, and then you start to realize, maybe I don't need to be wealthy. Maybe I'd be really happy if I were a painter living on the beach. Let's give that a try. And then you give that a try, and you are. And there's all kinds of little things. So I end up writing what I call a writer's outline, which is usually 30 pages. And I say, okay, I have a story. Now I can write. And then, of course, as I write, new ideas pop up and I rewrite that. But for me, it's really all about structure. If I don't have it, then that's when I start to panic, because I think, well, I don't have a story then.
Oh,
I love that. So Caroline, tell us, when readers get to the last sentence of this book and they close the back cover, what do you hope they take away?
Oh, I love that you asked that. I love what I call never-ending stories, or I also call it cut before the kiss. I don't like books for myself that end where everything's all tied up and you close the book and say, oh, that's okay. I like books where you close the book and you wonder and you think, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Where do they go
What's
from
happening
here?
next? Where do they go from here? I want people to know that, okay, some things are okay, but what about other things? Like, how are they going to make it right? What's going to happen? And I want people to like sort of imagine where these characters are going to be like a year from now, or even 2 years from now. And don't ask me because I don't know, but I'm hoping that it's going to work out for them in some way, some way.
And that's, I love it because that actually happened. Now, I've read this book quite a while ago, my first reading, but they stayed with me and I kept imagining where they were going to end up and how these characters were going to move their lives forward and stuff. So I've got it all written for you if you need it.
Good, they're coming to your house for dinner tonight. So
Good.
set the
Good.
table.
Okay. Can you give us any sneak peeks into what you're working on now?
I'm very superstitious, but because when I say like what a book is, then all of a sudden I think, oh, it sounds kind of stupid, doesn't it? I'm actually at the torn between two lover stage where I'm working on two novels at once. One is called The Inseparables, and it is about it's about friendship, like what makes a group of people inseparable and what tears them apart. Because of course it has to have some drama in there. And the one after that, which I'm really excited about, is it's based on a true event that happened in Long Island in 1922 and one in 1950 and I can't tell you what it involves other than it's kind of like this bizarre force of nature happened and what happens to the people involved in it. And that's all I know about it so far, or all I'm willing to know about it.
That's okay, because so what you've done is you've just piqued our interest, and we're going to be waiting by the bookstore door to get our hands on all the.
Good.
Okay, what is the book that you can't stop recommending these days?
Oh my God. There's two of them. One is actually there's three of them. Lessons in Chemistry, I absolutely loved. I
loved it
loved that
too.
book. And they did this wonderful show, TV series about it. It was actually amazing.
I did agree.
I loved it. I
Agreed.
just loved the character, loved the dog, loved
I didn't even
everything
mind
she
what
did.
they changed in the TV show. I liked them both. I thought
Yeah,
the whole
not at
thing
all.
was
Yeah, it was just
so
wonderful. And the
fresh and
acting
original. Yeah.
and the characters were fabulous. I just loved that. I also loved Hello Beautiful by Ann Napolitano,
Sure.
who is this. And the thing is that I met Anne like a zillion books ago at a book event. I think it was a Robin Call, and before she was famous, and she's lovely. She's just like the loveliest person. And that to me, that matters. I like it when a writer I love is also like a fantastic person.
Yeah.
And I loved that book.
Helps.
I absolutely love that book. So those are the books that I recommend to everybody,
I
among a
love that.
zillion others. But Lessons in Chemistry just did me in the best way.
Yeah, it was
Good.
a good
I
one.
so agree with you.
Same. So tell us about, do you have a book tour coming up when Days of Wonder comes out? And tell us where our audience can meet up with you on the road and online.
It already started. It's so bizarre.
Oh,
It's
great.
like all this stuff has started. If they go to my website, www.carolineleavitt.com, they can see all the stuff. It's a lot of podcasts. I'm going to Missouri this weekend because they're paying for me. I'm going to the Unbound.
Always a plus.
I just wanted to say that because I really wanted to come to Ohio. It's the Unbound Book Festival, which is run by the wonderful Alex George, who owns Skylark Bookstore. And I'm going to be there with Mark Cecil, who wrote Bunyan and Henry, who's wonderful.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
I just did an interview with him.
He's great, and the book is great. And Mary Weber O'Malley, who just won an award for being a great bookseller, who's also a wonderful person. And I'm thrilled about that. Then I'm going to be in New York at P&T Knitwear on the 23rd. Then I'm going to Mystic, Connecticut a few days later. Then Madison, Connecticut, and then Vermont. And I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I'm sort of like, I had to go out and buy a dress because I don't have any clothes. But I have my touring dress, so that's okay.
All right. I love
Good.
it.
Okay,
Um,
and so how can people connect with you online? Where are you,
I
where
would
do you
love
live?
for please connect with me on Facebook. I'm very easy to find. It's just Facebook, Caroline Leavitt. At Twitter, or X, I refuse to call it X, at Leavitt Novelist. I'm on Instagram at Caroline Leavitt. I'm a little bit on Threads, but not that much because I can't figure it out yet.
no.
And every once in a while, I'll post something ridiculous on TikTok. And I think I'm Caro Leavitt 99 there, but I'm not sure. But I'm very reachable. I'm very reachable. I don't hide.
I know I
I
love that
love
you
that.
interact so much with your readers online. It's really
Oh,
special.
No, it's
yeah.
great. It's really great.
And
Well,
I think, oh, I'm sorry. I
no,
was
go
just
ahead.
gonna,
Go ahead, Ron.
one more thing is I was just gonna say, and don't forget to connect with you through A Mighty Blaze,
Oh,
Oh,
which
yes,
true.
of course.
exemplifies all of the
Yes,
connections and support you do for other authors, which is
yes.
one
Absolutely.
of the things that Friends in Fiction does as well, and Mighty Blaze does it, and like what support authors get
Yes,
both.
yes, you have to support Friends in Fiction. It's just, Megan and Ron are both remarkable. They're what I call the North Stars for readers and
Wow.
writers, and they're
So
both
are
just
you.
wonderful,
You too.
wonderful people with huge hearts, and I love them, and you should too.
Oh, I love that. Well, same goes for my
You
A
are
Mighty
me.
Blaze.
Thank you.
Both A Mighty Blaze and Friends in Fiction were born at the same time. I guess you're about to
Pandemic.
celebrate your
Yeah.
4-year birthday as well.
Yep, we have
Uh,
toddlers,
yeah,
toddlers.
exactly, exactly. Well, Caroline, thank you so much. This was great. You've been such a wonderful guest today, and we
Thank
hope
you so much.
all of you out there watching and listening will go out now and grab your copies of Days of Wonder. And one place you can do that is on the Friends in Fiction shop at
Yes.
bookshop.org, where your
Yep.
purchases will support our show, our beautiful guest, and beloved indie bookstores nationwide.
Yes, we love bookstores.
Yeah,
Thank you so, so much. And
thank
Oh,
thank you
you.
everyone for tuning in. I really
that's
appreciate
amazing.
it.
And all of you out there, don't forget to tune in every Wednesday night right here on Facebook or YouTube for brand new longer form content about the books, authors, and the reading and writing world. You can find everything about the Friends in Fiction universe, from the live show to the podcast, the newsletter, to in-person events, information about how to purchase our guest books, to updates from the Friends in Fiction official book club, all on our website, friendsinfiction.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.